This is Process, a series that explores the many facets of creativity through dissection and execution.
Grit is often called a lot of things: courage, bravery, heart, backbone, spirit, toughness, determination. Whichever synonym you decide to use, one thing is apparent. Grit is about getting it done, whatever it might be. The amount of grittiness a person has is more often than not the difference between their success and their failure. While the lazy, unwilling person tucks their tail and runs at the first sign of adversity, it's the gritty who are charging in headfirst at full speed, even when they have nothing left in the tank. My favorite definition of grit comes from Newt Gingrich, who states, "Grit is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did." In the creative process, it's so common to abandon ideas or projects because they become taxing. What seemed like a great idea at the start suddenly seems impossible as you realize just how much work it actually takes to get the work done. And while I'm 100% a believer of stepping away and taking time for self-care and doing what you can to avoid burnout, I also know that there are seasons that require you to keep your head down and finish what you set out to do. Jerry Rice says, "Today I will do what others won't, so tomorrow I can accomplish what others can't." Now, all of this sounds great, but what if we don't consider ourselves gritty? Are there things that we can do to become more resilient when things get difficult? I think in order to learn how to become more gritty, we need to turn to someone who has literally written a book on the subject.
One characteristic emerged as a significant predictor of success. It was grit.
Angela Duckworth is an American academic, a psychologist, and a popular science author who has devoted much of her career to the study of grit. And she defines it as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. In her book, aptly named Grit, she gives a first-person account of her research with teachers working in some of the toughest schools, cadets struggling through their early days at West Point, and young finalists in the National Spelling Bee. And in that research, she has found scientific evidence that grit can grow. Duckworth says one way to think about grit is to consider what grit isn't. Grit is not talent, it's not luck. Grit isn't how intensely, for the moment, you want something. Instead, grit is about having what some researchers call an ultimate concern, a goal that you care so much about that it organizes and gives meaning to almost everything you do. And as she says, our potential is one thing, what we do with it is quite another. In increasing our quality of grittiness, we have to understand that there are 4 components to grit. The things you want to achieve should hopefully be the things you're interested in. Do you enjoy these things? Are you thinking about them almost constantly? Do you feel like something is missing if you go a day or two not spending time with these things? By aligning our goals with our interests, it makes it easier to continue them when faced with adversity. If we're interested in something, our natural inclination is to want to be better at it, a better athlete or filmmaker, a better gamer or painter. By conducting deliberate practice to improve on our weaknesses, we tend to find more joy in our interests and desire to continue pursuing them. If we believe that the work we're doing matters and on some level improves the lives of others, it drives us to press on when faced with resistance. There's a story of 3 bricklayers who are all asked the same question: "What are you doing?" The first one responds, "I am laying bricks." The second one says, "I am building a church." And the third says, "I'm building a house of God." The first bricklayer has a job, the second has a career, and the third has a calling. The component of purpose is quite apparent when looking at impactful leaders like Mother Teresa or Nelson Mandela. It was their purpose that kept them going and their purpose that solidified their names in the history books. By believing in our capacity for achievement, we can increase our ability to overcome difficulties. When things are down and we seem lost, it's this hope that keeps us looking up. As Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." These 4 hidden components can affect our ability to remain gritty when faced with resistance. If you find yourself ready to throw in the towel, see how many of these components resonate with you and which ones you can apply at that moment. One last resource that can really help with staying gritty is community. By finding like-minded individuals who are pursuing some of the same things as you, we can find support and advice to help keep us going if we find ourselves wanting to walk away. I've started a Discord community of creative folks that does just that, which I'll link in the description below. We do our best to keep each other's spirits up, motivate each other to keep going, and offer advice where we can when things get challenging. There's always been a pretty big debate centered around the discussion of talent versus effort. Do people who are naturally gifted have an advantage over people who are willing to work harder? Or is it the person who rolls up their sleeves and keeps their head down the one who finds success? Duckworth's illustration on this topic is a brilliant one. In her model, she states that talent is how quickly your skills improve when you apply effort. And achievement, or reaching our goals, is the direct result of using your skill and applying effort. Even if we may not be particularly talented in a certain area, we can work hard and over time acquire the skills necessary to be an asset. Once we have the skills we need to be successful, it's the effort we apply when using those skills that will help us reach our goals. When asked about hard work and effort, Will Smith said, "The only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on the treadmill. I will not be outworked, period." You might have more talent than me, you might be smarter than me, you might be sexier than me, you might be all of those things. But if we get on the treadmill together, there's two things. You're going to get off the treadmill first, or I'm gonna die. It's really that simple. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with all things process, please subscribe if you aren't already. And if you want to support the series, you can do so on my Patreon page, where patrons get a monthly behind-the-scenes vlog where I talk through what it takes to make these episodes happen, as well as insights about upcoming and future episodes. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.